Mornings with Brian. Moody Radio Cleveland. 103.3 at 6 to 9 a.m.
Tuesday, we tip our cap to one Mike Reynolds for filling in for Ron today. You look great and you sound great.
Thank you. Where's your hat?
Well, it's a pretend hat. I don't actually wear hats because I have a pinhead. None of them fit, right? I don't know if anyone else listening right now has that problem, but one size fits all is a lie from hell, is what it is.
What about snapbacks where you can adjust it? Do those work?
Well, when you have a pinhead, those look funny on you.
Oh.
I don't know how to explain this. Like the only ones that really work for me are the full fabric adjustable ones because it doesn't like peak up like I have a giant cone head. It's a problem, okay?
I'm sorry.
Well,
don't judge me.
I've got a pointy head, so I'm right along with you. It's like hats just kind of like fall off the back of my head because it's like fat in front and I've got like this thing in the back of my skull that goes down and it just kind of like whoop. Put the hat on, it goes, wheep.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt that. In fact, someone listening should be, you know how they have stores sometimes for left-handed people, which I'm one, by the way. Think about how hard life is for me with this pinhead and left hand.
Wow.
Someone needs a specialty hat store for guys with weird heads.
Right.
Maybe there is one.
There's a whole section for pinheads. There's a section for, what did you, fat back? Is that what you called it?
Pointy heads and fat back heads.
I don't know if we should call it that, but...
Snapback.
Snapback.
Okay. Well, and I'm not sure...
Lauren's going to die. It's live radio. What do you want to do?
I'm not sure if they're still in business, but there used to be a place called the Mad Hatter. It was a store for hats. It was at downtown Cleveland, so they could have, like, the Weird Hatter.
Right. Lauren is doing a Google search now for weird hats for weird-headed people.
I found big head caps, but...
You can, this one, hats.com, lets you search by your head shape.
Mm.
Do they have pinhead as a shape?
No.
Well, they're not going to be mean about it.
Well, how else would you describe that?
I don't know.
Like, I'm still mad at, like, even stores will have, you know, they have extra large, large,
yeah,
medium, small.
Big
There's
and
no
tall.
just like small.
No, there isn't. And that I find very offensive because I really need short man pants.
Mike and I, see how hard it is to be, Mike and me?
If you're going to have a big and tall section, you should have a short and stout section.
See?
Yes.
They don't, though.
The fashion industry.
I think we need you and I both need a hug. We should hug each other in a minute here.
Right, okay.
But by the way, before it's too late, I have to mention that last song we just heard from, for King and Countries, who that was. You might be like, yeah, well, so what, Brian? What's the big deal? Why would you bring that up again? Or for the first time? Because we have this huge contest running that why wouldn't you apply for your chance to win this? Or register for your chance to win. It's not a job. You'd apply, you'd register for your chance to win. It's called the Unsung Hero Weekend with For King and Country. If you're the grand prize winner, you're going to want to sit down for this. This is unbelievable. Here's what you get. Round-trip airfare for 2 to Nashville. 2 nights of hotel accommodations. You get a private advanced screening of the new movie Unsung Heroes. A private concert from For King and Country. You get to attend a podcast recording. And you get $250 of spending money. Ooh. And all you have to do is register for your chance to win. What are you doing just sitting there? Register. Text the word FLY to 440-546-2255. Text the word FLY to 440-546-2255, and you can register for your chance to win. You know there's 2 types of airport people? Did you know that? I don't know if you knew that.
I feel like there's more than 2, but yes.
You know, I think you're right there. Okay, if you were going to create your categories, and this is off the top of your head, who are the airport people you're aware of?
The ones that get there early and check to make sure that their gate exists and then goes to get food.
Okay.
You know, they walk all the way to the gate and like, yep, it
It's
exists. Now I'm going to go get some
You've
food.
described me. Like, it's not just, do I know that the screen says the gate? I'd like to go and look at the gate and say,
Make sure
hello,
it
gate.
exists.
Is my flight listed here? Okay, now I'll walk
then you
all the way back to go eat.
Then you sit there and you stress about missing your flight while you're looking at the gate.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Like, you want to be sure
I'm
they
gonna miss
change
it.
anything before I go to the bathroom here? Nope, it's all the same. But I'll walk all the way back down the whole concourse to go eat then.
You passed Chick-fil-A
Past all of them.
5 minutes ago.
Yes.
But you're going to go all the way back.
I just want to see the gate.
Yeah.
And you're describing me then. Is that you too?
Yes.
Okay. Daria, is that you?
Oh, yeah.
Mike?
You know, they're changing airports all the time. You never know when a gate is going to show up or disappear.
Look at you.
Exactly.
Are you making fun or are you trying to describe why you're doing this?
I'm just kind of talking off the top of my head.
It's like a portal. You don't know when they're going to appear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. It's you for people who travel a lot, like my friend Bill. He remembers airports, and you know, I was in.
Oh, good for him. It doesn't mean they're not going to change where his plane is.
Right. So I was in LAX in 1997, and the gate was over here, and now
Oof.
they've got a whole new concourse. Or you know, he remembers things like that. I'm like, I think I might have flown in and out of Colorado a couple times. One of those airports there.
So, do you go and see that the gate exists before you eat?
No, I trust the sign.
Well,
Trust
so-
the sign.
Really? You just show up and you're like, oh, that sign must be right. I have no idea where this thing is, but I'm just going to wing it. No pun intended.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I mean, if I've never had the sign steer me wrong in, you know, the dozen times I've flown.
How far in advance do you show up?
Oh, I show up really early because I don't want to get stuck in line or have to run somewhere.
Oh, I'm not running.
Yeah, there's no running in airports.
Can't be caught running.
No,
I
you
had to
look
do it
silly.
once and that was enough.
Were you embarrassed or you just mad?
Yes, both.
Okay. So you've described one. Who else is there? Because it seems to me that would be the best type of person.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, but
The people who get their coffee before they come to the airport and then they drink it all the way through the security line.
oh yeah,
And they're just relaxing.
I would be worried I have to go to the bathroom and I'm stuck in that line.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not doing that.
Mm-mm.
But there's people that do this.
Yes.
Okay.
Then the people that forget what it's like to travel. And so then they're checking in their bag and they have to take stuff out.
Yeah, what are they doing?
They seem very stressed.
What about the people that argue about things that should or shouldn't be in their pockets? I've been behind those people before. Like, no, this person knows they do this all day.
This is their job.
All day, every day. I think they know what can and can't be in your pockets.
Just for safety, take it all out.
Yeah, like why do we
Don't
need
even
to
worry about
debate
it.
this? Just ask, what should I do?
Take your shoes off and take it all out.
Yeah.
Who cares?
No, but they care, these people.
I got yelled at for having a tissue in my pocket still.
No, you didn't.
I did. It was kind of bunched up, and they're like, "What? Well." Long story short, I always get patted down because I've got artificial hips, and so they're patting me. What's that? It's a tissue. Take it out of your pocket. It's a
Okay.
tissue. So I take it out.
You argued,
proving
though.
It's a tissue. Well, no, I don't argue too much because
You
they
want to
have
get on your
those
plane.
rooms in the back that they take you back and pat you down and throw you in jail right away, and you're never seen again.
That is the fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what's the point of debating? Just ask them what to do and do it. Let's do it. Are there more people?
Obey the authorities. It's biblical.
That's right.
Exactly.
The people that are in a rush to get from one seat to another seat, like when they call to line up for the gate, everyone's, okay, got to get from this seat, and then I'm going to go sit on a plane for 4 hours or however long, and I can't be late to that seat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The people that like start like lingering towards the gate
Right.
Mhm.
just because the attendant is standing there. Like, must be time. And like the other plane hasn't even deboarded yet.
I think it's worse on like Southwest because they don't have assigned seating, and everyone wants a quote unquote good seat when
Yeah.
they're all equally bad.
It's all the same.
I was actually, when I was just in India with some friends from Moody Radio, it was me and 3 women who host around the country. And we were in Mumbai at the airport and got really comfortable. We're not the rush to get on the plane first, especially when you're going to be on a plane for like 12 hours or something. And so we kind of did the early, we chatted with the people up there and then sat down. Someone came in a panic to get us. He's like, "Are you going to Zurich?" We're like, "Yeah." He goes, we're about to close the door. Like, we have had to run. We didn't hear all the announcements, totally missed it all. We were relaxing, having fun, not going to rush to sit in the next seat. It was very uncomfortable. We're that person. Okay. There are more people.
That's all.
There's actually more people.
Oh, wait. The people who take their socks and shoes off on the plane.
Oh, gross. Oh, Lauren, I flew back from Accra to New York when I went to Ghana, and it's a long international flight. There were people about 10 hours in going into the bathroom barefoot.
Mm-hmm. Let's not.
Ew.
What?
Let's
I
not do
just
that.
wanted to walk up to him and go, "Excuse me, sir, are you okay? Did you forget you're barefoot? This is the grossest thing anyone's ever done in my view." Like, I mean, you go on a 1-hour flight and that bathroom gets disgusting.
Yeah.
But no, there's actually the Atlantic divided people into 2 types of airport people.
Okay.
I think we've just described more.
Yeah, I know what they are.
But it's more broad categories.
It's bored, frustrated people who just deal with it, and bored, frustrated people who are jerks.
No, it's
No?
different
Oh, okay.
categories altogether. We'll
All
see
right.
if we buy into their categories here in just a minute.
Blessed are the pure in heart, not externally pure or self-righteous. This beatitude Jesus spoke completely flipped the religious establishment upside down. Today, many believe if you do good enough, you might get into heaven or gain inner peace. But it's all accomplished by you. The Bible says our best deeds are but filthy rags before God. Only God can make you pure through His Son, Jesus Christ. Think about that today.
Moody Radio is thankful for the support from our listeners and Bridgeway Homeschool Academy, proud to provide 30 years of flexible curriculum programs and one-on-one support for homeschoolers. Learn more about textbook, online, and live online homeschool classes at bridgewayacademy.com.
Did you know the average person walks nearly 2,000 miles a year? Now think about the millions of children around the world who risk disease and miss out on opportunities simply because they walk those 2,000 miles without a decent pair of shoes. For the past 25 years, Buckner Shoes for Orphan Souls has provided more than 5 million pairs of shoes to kids in some of the most vulnerable communities in the world. That's over 5 million opportunities to put a smile on the face of a child and show God's love to boys and girls living in desperate situations. Many times, those shoes introduce families to Christ-centered programs, helping them rise above poverty and achieve their God-given potential. I'm Rob West, inviting you to provide shoes and share the love of Christ with children around the world and here in the United States. Find out how you can make an impact at GiveShoesToday.org. That's GiveShoesToday.org.
Join the conversation by call or text at 440-546-2255. It's Mornings with Brian on Moody Radio Cleveland.
Mornings with Brian. Moody Radio Cleveland. 103.3 at 6 to 9 a.m.
622 WCRF. You do not want to miss Thursday. Thursday, Ron's going to get his head shaved, and I'm going to get my face shaved. My wife started to weigh in online on the panic.
She did. That was fun.
You're like, what did you say? I'm terrified?
Scared.
Or you're scared? She goes, what do you think I am? Yeah, I'm going to be a totally new man on Thursday.
Mike, do you
won't
want to join?
recognize
Do
me.
you want to join the fun?
No.
Yeah,
Thank you for asking, though.
Again, I haven't seen underneath all this for years. I don't know what's going on under this. Things could have changed. I'm getting
I
older.
don't think so.
What if there's an extra chin down there? I don't know.
There might be an airport gate.
Could be.
That's where they come from.
The inside. You're silly.
Chris.
But yeah, so tune in Thursday, 8. The live stream will have it. It'll be a big to-do. We have a legit barber coming in with a straight edge. It's going to throw it down. It's going to be amazing. Also, share is almost at 100%. We're at what, Lauren? 98.6%. We're only $6,000 and some change away from 100%.
That's doable, friends.
Yeah. So who wants to finish that off? $6,700, 800-600-9624, moodyradio.org. All right. So the Atlantic wrote a piece. Lauren had a list of about 12 different airport people. But when you go to the airport, there's different types of people you really encounter. 3 of us have it right. Mike is almost there. What you're supposed to do is be there early, not too early. Check to see your gate exists. Like actually walk to the gate. Hello, gate. And we're good. And then you can go and relax for a minute. But this is not what they're talking about. Here's what the writer says. It's not hard to spot people about to miss a flight. They're weaving between on-time travelers at a speed somewhere between a power walk and a sprint, and they're elbow dancing their way to the front of TSA lines to plead their case for immediate screening. They look panicked, maybe red-faced. Their suitcase wheels probably won't cooperate for portions of the journey, and their vacation sandals are keeping them a little bit slower than they want to go. Because I'm a compulsively early person, I always assumed the other people trucking through the airport were doing their best to be on time, even if their best was different than my own, which means they failed.
That's very diplomatic.
Why would anyone look at an experience as expensive and anxiety-inducing as flying and want to make it a little bit riskier? Some chronically late people do, of course, intend to be on time, but a smaller group of frequent flyers heads into air travel with lateness as their goal, relishing the thrill of snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. Did you know this is a thing?
I didn't know people want to be late.
They do
I
it
just
on
thought
purpose.
They're just chronically late people.
No. Someone said to them, here's a quote, I just really live for the feeling of literally running through the airport barefoot because they didn't have time for you to put your shoes on after security and your laptop's in your hand because you didn't have time to put it on your back.
Barefoot?
They live for that?
Yeah, says his colleague, Ellen Cushing, senior editor at The Atlantic.
Ellen?
What's going on, Ellen?
He started to talk to friends and coworkers about their air travel habits after one guy, the editor of the New York Times, live tweeted his journey to the airport last Friday. He said, on my way to the airport, flight's at 2:45, board's at 2:20, my Lyft's ETA at the airport is 1:48.
Ooh, oh, that's making me sweat.
He then writes, feel like I haven't been this early for a flight in years, to be quite honest. Might stop for a snack on the way.
30 minutes early?
Yeah, this is New York.
Ooh.
He messaged updates, and he talked about later how part of the fun for him was not just intentionally being late, but tweeting about it to watch other people freak out. It gave him a thrill.
I think these people need a hobby.
Yeah, and so I guess everyone he talks to finds who uses the practice of airport lateness did so in spite of significant pressure from family and friends to be early. And then he described stories of husbands and wives going separate to the airport.
I would.
And friends going separate to the airport because one of them's like, no, I can't do this. Someone was like, what's the big deal? I'm going to take a nap. You go ahead. What? Okay. Diagnose this problem.
They're nuts.
I assume it's because they don't want to wait in the lines or just hurry up and just sit at the gate, I assume they just want to walk to the gate and walk onto the plane.
And they like the thrill of being late.
I can't
I can't
comprehend that.
What?
Clearly, they've been lucky enough to never miss a flight, or they wouldn't be playing with fire like that.
Some of them have missed flights and they don't care. They think it's thrilling.
There's something wrong with them.
I don't.
Missing a flight is one of the most stressful things.
Oh yeah, we a couple years ago we were on our way to my brother-in-law's wedding, and our friend picked us up to take us to the airport late. And on top of that, they decided not to open. This was like first flights of the morning. They decided not to open airport security till like 30 minutes before the flights were supposed to start taking off.
Yeah, that's right.
The line was forever long. So Mr. Flight thought we were going to miss the wedding. It was horrible. I don't know why you would do this on purpose.
Yeah, if you have a first flight out, you have to check when TSA opens. Because they still tell you, even for domestic flights, show up 2 hours early. And there are people, by the way, we didn't mention them. There are people that think that's a rule. And so they literally show up 2 hours early at Cleveland Hopkins Airport for a flight to Chicago or something. And it's just, the last time I went to Cleveland Hopkins, I'm telling you, there was no line for TSA.
Mm-hmm. I've been at Midway Airport in Chicago, and there was no one.
Yeah.
Like, I walked straight up to the TSA person.
How early were you? Were you really early?
Probably an hour-ish.
Yeah,
early.
I feel like an hour is about what you ought to do. An hour before boarding, to be clear.
Yes.
But there are the people that show up 2 hours early for a domestic flight. What are they doing?
I don't know.
Making their flights on time. I'm that person.
You're that person?
I'm that person.
And you
2
get to the
hours
gate-
before boarding?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I missed a flight once when I thought I was going to be it was a quiet airport, thought this was going to be really easy in and out. We missed our flight.
But Daria, 2 hours? That's a long time.
I don't want to miss my flight.
And you get there, and your gate's the flight before.
Yes.
You know,
you can't even tell if it's the right gate.
It's the flight before. Yeah.
You don't know. You go to I have this problem. I've been there before. You go look. It's not even listed.
Yeah.
How do you
It's
feel
so
about
early.
that?
I go and ask because I get scared.
I'm glad it's not just me. That's hilarious. Whee! All right, it's just about 6:30. Clearly, we've decided that many of you need to change your habits in your lives. I don't know why chronic lateness would be a good idea for anyone. I feel like there's got to be a proverb about that.
Lauren?
I'll look it up.
We'll figure that out and let you know. Coming up here in just a few minutes, our good friend Linda Uveges from City Mission is going to be here. And she wants to talk about the 2 key tools to ending homelessness. We've chatted about one before, but the other one I think is really key to understanding, and it might surprise you, actually. We'll get to that here in just a few minutes.
Has murder affected your life in any tangible way? I'm Nate Hunter. This is Pause for Prayer. The mother of Lake and Riley, a 22-year-old Georgia nursing student murdered by an illegal immigrant while out for a jog on campus, shared how she has derived strength with the devastating loss of her daughter to an avoidable tragedy. My family has faced the most devastating, unimaginable loss that anyone could ever be forced to endure, Phillips wrote. I would like to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for being with me and my family during this heartbreaking time. I encourage everyone to have a personal relationship with Jesus. I give him all the glory for getting us through this. Let's pause for prayer. Dear Father in heaven, the first thing we will do is address you as King and Lord. We acknowledge that in your omniscience, you know everything. You could have miraculously intervened in this murder, and you could intervene in our trials. Thank you for allowing difficult circumstances in our lives. You grow us through these times, just like you did and you continue to do with Lake and Riley's family. Our prayer request is that when we face devastating circumstances, and some of us are right now, that we remember your love and your omniscience. King David said in Psalm 73:26, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." We might not have a murder victim in our family, but some of our struggles are hard to face and resolve. We want to also remember and pray for fill in the blank. That is also hurting us right now. We call on the sovereignty and comfort you have and offer us. We ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free. debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit
Mornings with Brian. Moody Radio Cleveland. 103.3 at 6 to 9 a.m.
have experienced trauma.
And for those who don't follow these kind of things, modern psychology in the last 20 years has made leaps and bounds when it comes to evidence-based psychology and being able to understand these things scientifically speaking. It's not, Sigmund Freud in some couch and ideas about the brain. This is legitimate evidence. So you've got some information for us on the impact of trauma on just people in general. Like how does trauma impact somebody?
Right. So it's been very interesting. I want to make this statement. I'm not a clinical counselor or a psychologist, but done a lot of reading and studying about those that we serve and what they're experiencing. So it is so impactful. It actually affects the whole body. And I was listening to a talk the other day, and she set this scenario which really impacted me. So just imagine you're in the forest. You're walking through the forest and you see a bear, and you have a fight, flight, or freeze response. And the adrenaline goes, your airways are opening, all those things are happening in your body. And you'll do one of those. You'll freeze, you'll run, and most likely you're going to run. She said, imagine that this bear comes home every night.
Oof.
That really got to me. And that just that fight, flight, or freeze for those experiencing trauma. And that is what is that almost like a toxic trauma that is happening all the time. And we can only imagine what those who are experience homelessness, poverty, a crisis, and they're fearing that bear that is just constantly pressing on their mind.
Yeah, it's, people say harsh things like, you just move on. No, you don't move on.
Right.
I had a counselor once tell me that sometimes a traumatic experience is similar, where you're walking in the woods in the middle of nowhere and you're hit by a semi.
Right.
Like, because that makes no sense, right?
Right.
But that's how trauma can feel, because you weren't expecting it, you weren't ready for it, and it's that scary, that life-changing. And so it impacts all of us, right? Not just fear and recurring memory of these things. It can affect how our body functions.
Right, exactly. It's very interesting, the impact on our brain and your health, those who have experienced trauma. And I have shared just a little statistic that I mentioned before we got on the air is so we call these adverse childhood experiences. They're called ACE scores. So when we do assessments, and they do this in the hospitals, just they talk about social determinants of health. And so this impacts your health overall. So they have 10 different areas. So if you have experienced physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, that's one area. Then there's neglect of physical or emotional neglect. And then there's we call household challenges. And those are mental illness, intimate partner violence, domestic violence, parental separation, divorce, and incarceration, or substance abuse or misuse. So those are the 10 areas. And the studies show that the life expectancy of individuals with 6 or more of these experiences in their childhood, they're 19 years shorter life expectancy than someone who has experienced none of those.
19 years shorter life.
Yes. That was shocking to me, but it shows you that all of this, it impacts our overall well-being. It impacts your likelihood for different diseases because your immune system is impacted. All of these adverse experiences that people have experienced through their life as a child really impacts the whole person. And again, you never annoy me when you talk about, don't have these stereotypes of people who are homeless or experiencing situations, because nobody chooses this.
Right.
Nobody has chosen to experience those types of things in their lives. So
yeah, I mean, what you're describing is It's an adult who had these things done to them as a child.
Exactly.
That's caused them to be a situation where they would, on average, live 19 years less than the rest of us.
Right.
They didn't choose it. It was done to them.
Right. They are victims of that experience, and that wasn't something they chose. Now we need to break that cycle, right? We want to interrupt that cycle, and that's what we get to do at the mission is let's talk about those. How do we address that? How do we care for you? Yeah. And really, you can't necessarily reverse those experiences, right? Those happened. You can't deny those. But now that we know that, now what do we do?
Yes. It's 6:46, time for a quick break. With us in studio, Linda Uveges, Chief Executive Officer of the City Mission in Cleveland, where they minister to those experiencing homelessness. When we come back from this break, you might be thinking, well, okay, yeah, I'm hearing all those statistics, but how do they apply to people experiencing homelessness? Wait till you hear statistics when it comes to those experiencing homelessness and trauma. We'll get to it in just a minute.
This is David Harms with the ministry India Partners, and I have walked through the red light districts of Mumbai, India numerous times, and trust me, it is dark. Young girls have no joy in their eyes because they feel they have no future, and they'll be stuck in the trade for the rest of their lives. But once they get into a safe house run by India Partners, well, just listen. That is God at work, which is why for the last year we've shared powerful stories of safety, rescue, and care happening through the India Partners safe houses. These girls are safe from harm, well cared for, and introduced to the transforming and healing love of Jesus. Learn more about the power of rescue and care in a safe house at indiapartners.org/Moody.
Everybody's going through something, which means everybody could use prayer. If you'd like our staff to pray for you, simply email your request to prayerworks@moody.edu, prayerworks@moody.edu.
Join the conversation by call or text at 440-546-2255. It's Mornings with Brian on Moody Radio Cleveland.
6:48. We here on the show at the radio station WCRF love City Mission and the great work they're doing for the gospel. Linda Uveges with us, Chief Executive Officer of the City Mission, where they minister to men, women, and children experiencing homelessness. And there's so many misconceptions about the homeless community among Christians in particular that it's become a little thing of mine that drives me nutty. And so I love when you come in and share stuff like this with us. Mm-hmm. I'd never seen statistics like this. So you're talking about how, before the break, there's two key factors that we can address to end homelessness. One is affordable housing. We've talked about that in the show before. Go back on the archives and on YouTube and look for it. There's also knowing about trauma, being trauma-informed. Mm-hmm. We've talked about the dramatic impact that trauma can have, even reducing your lifespan.
Right.
So the real question becomes, how many people experiencing homelessness have experienced trauma? And you've got some numbers on that.
Sure. We have some numbers here. So I would say that for our women, 87% experience abuse, both in childhood and adulthood. It's heartbreaking.
87, almost 90%.
Right.
Experience abuse in childhood and adulthood.
Right. And you know what's interesting, Brian, is oftentimes they are not even aware until they get to the City Mission, because maybe they just thought that was normal.
Yes, it's normative in their experience to be abused.
Exactly. And so when they come to the mission and we start talking and uncovering and we say, no, that wasn't okay. That wasn't okay the way you were treated as a child and even as an adult. So it's very interesting. The light bulb kind of comes on and they realize there is something better. So I've seen that happen. Also, 92% of mothers have experienced severe physical or sexual assaults over their lifespan, and
92% have been physically or sexually assaulted.
Right. Heartbreaking.
And that's a dramatic trauma to experience.
Yes.
At all.
Right. and to carry that with them, and that they carry that with them, their memories, it carries it in, even in their body. That's just there, and it impacts everything, like we've already shared. And for the men too, 68% reported childhood physical abuse, 71% reported adult physical abuse, 56% childhood sexual abuse, and 53% adult sexual abuse. And these are men. And oftentimes men don't want to talk about that. So my inclination is think it's probably more than that, because that's not something they're very willing to share. But this is what we know, what we experience at the mission.
And when you sandwich those together, right?
Right.
I mean, what you're really saying is odds are when a man comes into the city mission, he's likely been abused in some way.
Yes, absolutely.
Because these are all separate statistics, right, about an experience. And so almost everyone walking in your doors has been abused.
Yes.
Physically or sexually.
I don't think that's a stretch to say. And one real quick story, when I was, it is a lot. I was sitting in a group the men were having one morning, and was led by one of our staff, and he put all these different numbers up on this whiteboard, 10 or 5 and 22, random numbers. And he asked the men to go up and circle the age where you first remember being harmed. And that was so heartbreaking. This one gentleman went up and circled number 5.
Oof.
Number 5 years old, he remembers. And he was in his 40s, mid-40s, and he still can't get over why. Why did that happen to me? So this is something that is carried by our residents and those that we serve. So we talked about how do we care for them. Safety is number one. We want all of our residents, our men, women, and the kids to feel safe. They need to have that sense of safety because they didn't have it before. And it's always interesting when someone first comes in. And I do remember when I was working at the front desk at Laura's home, and, this woman would come in, and I'm thinking she's just going to be really happy to be here. I was clueless. I was a volunteer at the time, and she looked upset, and she said, she looked angry, and she said to me, well, you don't know who I am. You don't even know what I've experienced. And she was having a hard time trusting. So how do I know that this is a safe place? How do I know my kids are going to be safe? So I also want to dispel any misunderstandings that our women care deeply about their children. This is not something, they don't care. They're deeply invested in their children. So anyway, we provide that safety.
Well, and I can actually add to that, because I recall for your school supplies drive, we all went there together, and it was really sweet because, Lauren, you got pulled by some moms essentially just to chit-chat, and you spent the morning with some moms who love their babies.
Yeah, I was pregnant, very pregnant, so it was obvious that I could be, relatable to them. And just talk with them and hold babies.
And there's no doubt they deeply love their children.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I loved that. I was like, I'm so glad she's over there. We're fine over here. She's fine. So.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect, which we talked about, safety and building that trust, making sure that we respect their boundaries also as they, come into the mission. But we also think choice is very important. I do a little advisory group. So I meet with a group of men every so often, and then a group of women. And I let them know, you're the experts. You are living this. I am not. And I know some things, and obviously I've, been at the mission for a long time, but you know what it feels like. And so to talk to them and get their input, they have a voice. They have value. And for them to have a voice is something that they've never experienced before. So I love doing that and hearing from them. And then the other thing is we talk about choice, even the way our facilities are designed. We want choice to be part of that. So when you go to the dining room, there's different choices of where to sit. You can sit in a high top. You can sit in a booth. You can sit in a regular table. There's different kinds of chairs. Even our pathways for our children. There's bean bags. There's little groupings over here for the kids. And so they can have a choice of where they want to simply just sit or have their lunch or dinner. And that matters.
It brings
them.
dignity.
It does. And that's, certainly one of our core values. And because they're made in the image of God, we will give them that dignity because that's how God sees them.
I like how you as well distinguish between once we establish that someone experiencing homelessness, the strong odds are they've been abused in their life, not just a little, but probably a lot.
Right.
And they've experienced a lot of trauma in their life. You don't say, what's wrong with you?
Yes.
What do you say instead?
We say, what has happened to you? Way different than saying what's wrong with you, like something's, deeply wrong with you.
What are you, lazy? Why don't you just get a job?
Right.
Why don't you just try harder?
But what's happened? Tell us your story. They love that opportunity to share. It takes time to build that trust like we're talking about, but we know that they have experienced so much hurt. And so we gradually work with them and build that trust, and we can talk about what's happened.
And you make an excellent point as well, is if that weren't all enough, what put someone in a position of experiencing homelessness was likely a traumatic event in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Experiencing homelessness in and of itself is traumatic.
Right.
Like, I can't even imagine what it would feel like if I didn't know where I was going to sleep tonight.
Right.
That kind of fear and uncertainty would cause certainly trauma in someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
So they're being traumatized.
Exactly. Right. Every minute when you think, especially a mom with children, I can't imagine, I have 5 kids. When they were younger, I couldn't even imagine having to go from place to place, or how do I make sure they're safe? How do I get them to school? How do I make sure their clothes are washed? I mean, so many things. And what happens if they get sick? That's a whole nother issue. What am I going to do? So, yeah.
Yeah, this is so important for all of us as followers of Christ to understand, because I think it's a game changer in that it forces us to do what the scriptures already tell us to do.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't need this.
Right.
But I know I need to be reminded of these kind of things, because we're supposed to, dramatically so, love God, love our neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And that love is not just like hey, great job, go get a sandwich if you're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
It's, James says, what good are you if you just walk up to someone that's hungry and say, hey, have a great day?
Right. Interesting. I was just listening to a sermon and talking about caring for the poor. And we don't care for the poor because we're trying to earn something or be more accepted in God's eyes, right? We do it because the sacrifice that Jesus made, and we are compelled to care for those. It's nothing that we're earning, but we should be compelled to do what we do by caring for the poor, caring for the widow, caring for those that don't have a voice. And that's what we get to do every day. And I think I have the very best job ever. I don't even want to call it a job. It's a ministry, as you know. And I also love, share, right? The gospel changes everything. That's it. And that's how we are so aligned with Moody and grateful for all that you share and allow me to be able to talk about these types of issues that are so critical in our community.
That's super kind of you. Thank you for that. We're grateful for the partnership as well. Linda Uveges has been with us. She's Chief Executive Officer of the City Mission. Biggest takeaway, again, in this is it's, as followers of Christ, we have to understand someone experiencing homelessness, it's not their fault.
Exactly.
Something has happened to them.
Yes.
And nobody would choose in a rational mind to be homeless.
Nobody has chosen this.
Nobody.
This has happened to them, and let's address those root causes. Let's get to there for every individual and treat them with dignity and care for the whole entire person, the holistic care.
Yeah, and that if we accept that fundamental principle that is so true statistically and experientially, it changes the entire way one views homelessness.
It does.
And it compels us to act in a different way, I think. And so somebody might hear this and go, well, Linda, you're amazing. City Mission is amazing. It's donor-based. It's gospel-centric. If somebody wants to learn more about volunteering or donating to City Mission to keep your whole program going, how do they do that?
Sure. Definitely visit our website, www.thecitymission.org. And we have volunteer opportunities. We have ways to pray, or if you want to do a diaper drive or anything, we will put our greatest need up on our website. So we so much appreciate, as you mentioned, we don't take any government funding. We just rely on faithful donors. And God has blessed us for 113 years.
Wow.
To remain in Cleveland and to do the work that he's called us to do. So please go to our website. I started as a volunteer. It changed my life. And I did it with my family. This is an opportunity to do something with your children as well.
Do you have any seats left at the banquet if someone wants to go?
We do. We have this amazing gala on April 26th. There are only 3 tables left. We're almost sold out, but if you want an individual ticket, that's also on our website. We'd love to see you there, and you get to hear more about the mission and have a good time.
Can't wait. Linda Uveges, again, thank you so much for what you do. Say hi to the staff and give Jamie Buxton a hard time.
Absolutely. That's my job.
We call her what? The Czar of Fun? Is that what we call her? I think that's what we call her.
Yeah, I think so.
Can we change that
She'll
officially?
be here tomorrow.
Really? What should we
No,
do? Should we
tomorrow's
come
not
up with-
Friday. Wishful thinking.
She'll be here Friday.
She'll be here Friday? Yeah. Yeah, I never remember her title, so I think we should just change it for me.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Isn't it
Done.
community engagement manager?
It is.
So it's a me problem, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, it's my problem. I'll work on it. Thank you, Linda.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You bet.
Good to be here.
It's now 7:02. We got time for news here. Ron is out, Mike is in, and when we come back, there's actually, you don't realize this, there's many stages in a couple's life cycle that can be challenging, like the cycle of a marriage. I didn't realize there were 6. Psychology Today just said there was. We're going to look at all of them. Yeah, yay! We're going to look at that here in just a minute.
Mornings with Brian on Moody Radio Cleveland, WCRF Cleveland, WVMS Sandusky, WVML Millersburg, WVMN Newcastle, WVME Meadville, WVMU Ashtabula, and everywhere with the Moody Radio app or at moodyradio.org/Cleveland.
Former President Donald Trump's lawyers say he is unable to secure the $464 million fraud judgment against him in New York. It's 7:04. I'm Mike Reynolds, Moody Radio News, in for Ron Eastwood. Trump needs to post bond by next week, or New York Attorney General Letitia James can start collecting during the appeals process. According to legal documents filed yesterday, his legal team is asking the appeals court to step in, adding finding a bond is, quote-unquote, practically impossible. Cleveland voters are headed to the polls today. It's primary day in the Buckeye State. Polls are open from 6:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. Voters around the state will cast ballots for their choices to be the party nominees for president, Congress, and the U.S. Senate. Voters will also choose judicial candidates and vote in the Cuyahoga County prosecutor's race, as well as voting up or down on a county tax renewal for Health and Human Services. Gas prices are falling this week in Cleveland. AAA reports the average price of regular fuel is now $3.24 per gallon. That's a drop of 10 cents per gallon from a week ago. The average cost of a gallon of regular fuel in Ohio is $3.21 per gallon. Back in a moment with a look at scores and skies.
Pursue your passion of shepherding, teaching, and ministry leadership with a Master of Divinity from Moody Theological Seminary. Study systematic theology, pastoral practices, learn to analyze Scripture through the lens of the original Hebrew and Greek texts. Take classes when and how it's most convenient for you, on campus in Chicago or Plymouth, Michigan, or online wherever you are. Get started today at moody.edu/mdiv, moody.edu/mdiv.
In sports, the Cavaliers edged the Pacers 108-103. March Madness begins with 2 matchups in the first 4, tipping off from Dayton today. Wagner versus Howard and Colorado State versus Virginia. Ohio State basketball also returns to action tonight against Cornell. The Guardians slipped by the White Sox 8-5 in a spring training game. The Guardians host the Brewers this afternoon. Meanwhile, the Reds fell to the Giants 4-2. Here's your Moody Radio Cleveland weather forecast. Mostly cloudy, high near 45 degrees. Right now in Cleveland, 30 degrees and cloudy skies. In Akron, it's 28 with flurries. In Lorain, it's cloudy and 30 degrees. And in Mansfield, cloudy, 27. It is 7:06 with Moody Radio News. I'm Mike Reynolds in for Ron Eastwood.
Broadcasting live from the Bob Devine Studio. It's Mornings with Brian. Want to join the conversation? Call or text now at 440-546-2255.
Mornings with Brian. Moody Radio Cleveland. 103.3 at 6 to 9 a.m.
.709 WCRF, Mornings with Brian. Special thanks to DJ Mikey for coming in for Ron today. Thanks, brother. You sound great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You look great on the live stream, too, by the way.
Of course.
I mean, no one's surprised by that.
He was on our first live stream, and a lot of people hadn't seen us before, and they thought that you were Ron.
They did.
Yeah, Ron's much more handsome.
I don't know. I feel like it's a strong tie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Both of you are in danger of breaking the live stream when you're on. Yeah.
Yeah, the glass on the iPad thing is cracking already.
Well, I mean, it may shut down the internet when I get my beard shaved on there and break the glass, because we don't know what's going to happen when my beard gets shaved at 8 a.m. on the live stream on Thursday. I didn't do this by choice. Dave Safransky kind of made me do it.
He did.
And then a donor that donated $5,000 made me do it.
Nick from Alliance.
Nick from Alliance. Yeah. Why can't I remember that?
I don't know.
I think it's the trauma of
the
whole thing.
They ganged up on you.
They really did.
Yeah.
And, yep. And Lauren put on Facebook yesterday that you're scared, and Sarah was like, "You're scared. I'm terrified," or something like that.
She said, "What am I?" And I said, "Terrified."
And then somebody else was like, "Well, I wonder what Brian's wife thinks of this." And she's like, "I'll tell you what I think. This is pretty crazy. Like, I'm not going to hear the end of it from my children.
Maybe they'll like it."
No. Once I did this before. I came out of the bathroom, and the group of people in my family, I don't remember exactly who was there, but they all burst out laughing.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sad.
So I will not be looking at comments for a while.
Yeah, that's for the best.
I'll read them for you.
Like, to me?
Yeah.
No. Unless they're like, could he look even younger? Yes.
Someone.
One of our colleagues in Michigan said that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
She's like, he looks about 26 now, which, by
That's
the way,
generous.
No, it's not. When I was in India, don't you remember? I talked to some 18-year-old girls from a program we were at, and they thought I looked 26. Thank you. I'm going to look 16.
It's generous.
I need to carry around an ID regularly just in case someone thinks I'm a child.
Well, your ID has you with your beard on it, so they're going to think it's not your ID.
What am I going to do?
I don't know.
You can see the headline now. Christian radio host arrested for false ID.
Right. I mean, oh boy, I'm stressed out. And we're also going to shave Ron's head. The whole thing's set up. It's going to be a barber, a straight edge. It's going to be over the top.
Our manager yesterday, Josh Villa, said we're going to shave 1/3 of a head, and it really got me.
I wonder if that really is that. Well,
Third.
I mean, that's not it's not wrong.
No, it's pretty close. It's half to a third.
Yeah, Ron's got the stripe, basically. He's bald on top.
Right.
He's not doing a comb over. There's none of that.
No.
Although that'd be awesome if he did. I feel like he should. That's true. Wow. So listen into that. It's Thursday at 8. It all begins. It's in that hour, and you can find it on our live stream. So go subscribe before it's too late. Some of you watch the live stream. Why haven't you subscribed? It's much easier that way.
Very much.
So just
You just get probably
hit
a
it?
notification or something, and it just shows up in your feed, I assume.
And what is it? What do they say again? All the YouTube stars.
Smash that
Smash
subscribe
it.
button.
I never remember the smash part. I'd like hit it, slam it. No,
Yeah.
it's smash it. The subscribe button.
Yeah, if you'd like to find it, text us the word live to 440-546-2255.
All right, so Psychology Today, I was minding my own business, looking around for things to talk about, and it turns out there's 6 challenging stages in a couple's life cycle, so in a marriage. I thought there were like maybe 3. Were you guys aware of this? It's 6 challenging phases in marriage? Mike is like, yep, I knew it. I've hit all 6. Or Kelly might say that.
Yeah, I don't know if there's stages, but there's events.
Right.
There are events.
But no, I kind of buy into this concept. So let's see how they break this down. Here's what the writer says, how they set it up. Just as you know, a 2-year-old has different needs and presents different challenges than an 8-year-old, and an 8-year-old is going to be a lot different than an 18-year-old. So too are the different stages in the life cycle of a couple's relationship. Here's some of the most common stages with their challenges and dangers. No surprise, the first one is the first year. I've heard this one a million times. The first year is sometimes the hardest. Sarah and I said to each other as we started the first year, I don't know what's wrong with all those people, but we're an extra special couple. It's going to be wedded bliss for a year. And the year finished, and we said, oh no, I guess they were right. That was really, really, really hard. First year hard for you? Probably not. You're like, no, we're from Moody Bible Institute. Everything's better.
No, we come from really different family backgrounds, so that was hard. Like expectations of a family and what a marriage looks like.
And that's what you're working out, because it says, the challenge is setting up routines and creating an everyday compatible lifestyle for both. That's the challenge. You and Jimmy?
Yeah.
Hard?
It was, yeah.
Mike, you and Kelly?
It wasn't for me.
Not everybody experiences this problem.
Yeah, I don't think it was difficult for her. I mean, we had obviously some things to adjust to and everything, but we'd known each other and were engaged for quite a while. I think we were a couple / engaged for 3 or 4 years. So there wasn't a whole lot that we were like, oh my goodness, I had no idea about this, about you.
That could make a difference. I mean, meanwhile, Sarah and I argued about the mail. I remember that one threw me off. I told you about this?
No.
Like, I lived in and purchased the house before we got married, and I was there. And so she was coming regularly and changing her address. And one day she's like, all right, so when the mail comes, she started telling me the categories in which the mail would be stacked. And as soon as she said categories, I was just like in my head, like, no, I'm not doing that. But I just pretended like I was listening. And that didn't go well, by the way, when she got to the house a couple of days later, and there was one giant pile of mail that I didn't even look at. You're like, no wonder there was a problem. I look at all the things I can see in your face you're thinking about. I can't believe she married you. That's the first one.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
I wasn't thinking
that was a me problem for sure.
Yeah,
but who has categories of mail? It's just
it's
mail.
a little silly, but
oh, if she's
it
listening,
is.
I feel a little better.
To me.
So, all right, the second one, the birth of a child. This says the couple's no longer a couple. There's little sleep for a year or two. And while there are good family times, life is hectic. There's stress of balancing work and parenting, worries about money, and disagreements about parenting. The danger here is that each falls into their silos, feels a loss of intimacy, and they have to struggle to keep their heads above water and stay connected as a couple. And I would say for us, that's 100% true. Especially for us, the second child, everything almost fell apart. It was really, really hard in our marriage. You're in the heat of it, so you don't have to answer that one if you don't want to. We can just skip past you. But you're the only other one in this room with.
Yeah, no. Having our first child, there was a big change in our marriage.
I mean, it's hard to describe how different things become.
Mm-hmm.
Everything changes in your marriage. Everything changes in your lifestyle. And the other person drives you way more crazy than before. I love the rule you guys set about dealing with a baby in the middle of the night. Can you share that again?
Yeah. All babies are bad in the middle of the night. Trey was bad in the middle of the night for like almost 2 years. So we had to come up with a rule probably when he was 15 months old. So it was a while. We had been mean to each other in the middle of the night for a long time. Whatever we said in the middle of the night doesn't count. Because you're so sleep deprived and you're crying because you're not sleeping. They're crying because they're not sleeping. You're like, I'm never going to survive. Am I ever going to sleep again? I'm damaging this child.
Oh, yeah.
And so you just say mean things. And you really don't mean them. You're just exhausted and frustrated. And so we had to decide whatever he or she said last night doesn't count because I know that's not what they actually mean.
I love
We're
that.
just in a really hard spot. And so you wake up in the morning and you forgive each other and move on.
Teach a class, because we didn't have that. Not only did we not have that, but we also argued more about sleep than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Whose turn is it to go to bed early? Whose turn is it to get up early? Whose turn is it in the middle of the night?
I just got him.
Yeah.
It's your turn to get him.
Don't you know I didn't sleep yesterday? Oh, goodness. So you did that too?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's like all we argued about for about a year.
I was just with him for 2 hours. It's your turn to get him.
It's terrible.
Oh.
But by the way, you think like, wait, there's 6 different challenging stages in a marriage?
That's not enough? The
And
ones we
that's just 2. There's other ones. We'll get to those here in just a minute.
For King and Country. Are you available the weekend of April 19th? Great, because we're thinking we'd like to send you to Nashville to meet them. Moody Radio will send you and a friend to a 3-day event at the Country Music Hall of Fame hosted by Joel and Luke Smallbone. Pre-release movie screening of Unsung Hero, private listening party, podcast recording, and more. Enter to win at moodyradio.org/unsung. No purchase necessary. Contest ends March 31st at midnight. moodyradio.org/unsung.
Moody Radio is thankful for listeners and support from businesses like Duma Meats and Farm Market. Duma Meats and Farm Market, supporting Moody Radio in Cleveland and surrounding areas. More information about Duma Meats and Farm Market is at dumameats.com.
Kayla was in a panic when she called CareNet's pregnancy decision line. When she asked about her choices, we explained all of her options. Kayla said, "But I'm already at an abortion clinic. I'm in their bathroom." Our pregnancy decision line coach asked Kayla what she wanted to do. She said, "I want to leave." Kayla left the abortion clinic and we connected her with one of CareNet's life-affirming pregnancy centers where she could get free services and learn more about her pregnancy and her options. What you need to know is that the federal government is working on plans to fund a national abortion hotline using your tax dollars to refer women to abortion providers. The government's hotline won't tell women about all of their choices. It will be a referral line for one choice, abortion. We need you to join thousands of others who are pro-life and sign the CareNet Pledge to stand against the National Abortion Hotline. Sign the pledge now at care-net.org. That's care-net.org.
Are you looking for candid conversation from a biblical perspective? You found it. It's Mornings with Brian on Moody Radio Cleveland.
7:20, buckle up because attorney Nathan Zion Esquire is going to be in studio with us in a couple of minutes to talk about trusts. Not trust as in whether or not you think someone is trustworthy, but like an actual legal trust. Do you need one? Do you want one? Why? What? Huh? He'll be here to talk about it. For now, I was compelled by this article from Psychology Today, 6 Challenging Stages in a Couple's Life Cycle. And in the midst of this, I'm reminded what my friend Nancy Kane told Sarah and I over dinner the weekend of Sarah and my marriage intensive. We were in a real bad spot, and we did a weekend marriage intensive with Ray and Nancy Kane. And Nancy looked at us and said, there's only about 10% of Christian marriages that are healthy and thriving. Only about 10%. Now, as we get to some more of these stages, non-Christian couples will divorce in some of these stages. Christian couples give up and stay married because they're supposed to, is what they say to themselves.
They stop trying.
Mm-hmm. So we talked about the first year is the first challenging cycle. Second one is birth of a child. Third, the 7-year itch is what they call it. The 7-year itch. Most couples in the U.S. get divorced around 8 years. Did you know that?
That's interesting.
I didn't know that.
It is interesting.
Most couples in America get divorced at about 8 years. You start to feel restless. You have less in common. You squabble more. The problem is that you've changed since year one. Lifestyles and routines you created no longer fit for the people you're becoming and for how your career is developing. And so it says the dangers is some couples divorce because their solution is simply starting over. 7 years into a new relationship, they may find themselves in the same situation. Others don't divorce but get distracted by work or become child-centered and put their marriage on the back burner. That's what Christian couples do. You get the 7-year itch. The other person starts to bother you a little bit. They're annoying. They're different. You're feeling bored. You get lazy. So you just focus on the kids. They ignore each other. And it sounds crazy, but it's so easy to slip into that. And I know you guys are, how long you been married? 6 years?
In April, it'll be 8 years.
Uh-oh. Sorry. You're like, no, Mike, you've been married how many years?
Many. 30 years. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? It's a long time ago to say 7-year itch, but.
No, I was just thinking how weird that seems to be for a reason to get divorced. I'm bored or you're different. I just remember, I remember thinking, oh, wow, Kelly's different now about this or that, but I don't remember it being a shock because people change. I'm a different person now than I was when I was 20.
Oh, so different. All of us do that. You know, I wonder what it is, though. I think the presumption of the author of this article is that it's a married couple that has children. It seems to be that's the presumption of these 6 stages.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that does, children add a different dynamic because you naturally are going to be including them in your decisions, how you feel about things, and that is a difficulty because you're 2 different people. You're, as a husband, going to look at raising the kids, what to focus on as it comes to the kids in a different light than Sarah is, because that's how God made us.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's easy to love kids because they're your kids and you love them, and it's easy to let them become number one in your marriage.
Yeah,
and that is where significant danger comes in. And there are couples where one or the other does it.
Yeah, I've heard that is the worst thing you can do is to focus on your kids to the exclusion of your marriage. Your marriage always has to come first because the kids are going to move out, and they're not going to care, if they had applesauce or apple pie for dessert, but they're going to care that, okay, well, do I go to mom's house for Christmas or dad's house for Christmas?
Yeah, well, and this is where I think you can begin to experience what it's like to be married with kids and feel lonely in a house full of people.
Sure.
The next stage in the 6 challenging stages of a couple's life cycle, midlife. This is when the kids start leaving the house, and a child-centered couple finds they only know each other as parents, not as partners. Yeah. And so the whole thing begins to fall apart. The dangers here is divorce is now or never. 36% of divorces are over the age of 50.
Wow.
36% of divorces are over the age of 50. But if they don't divorce, and this is what a lot of Christian couples do, they live parallel lives, each doing their own thing, perhaps just separating after some time. But they live, again, I think Christian couples say, well, divorce isn't an option. We're not going to work on this. We don't know how. We won't do counseling. So we're just going to live separate lives. There's still 2 more phases. Stage 5 in the life cycle of a marriage that's a challenge is retirement. So really what they say is, let's say there's a breadwinner in the family. Right away, they enjoy being out of work and being retired, and they spend about 6 months like getting stuff done and playing golf and doing all these things. And then all of a sudden, all that stuff starts to get boring, and they realize they've lost their identity in their life because their identity was their job for so many years. And the partner who was not the breadwinner gets disappointed about what retirement looks like as that person slips into depression. And so the danger here is that while some couples shift to grandparenting or volunteering, depression is common, possible divorce for those who didn't divorce during midlife crisis, or falling into a state of relationship where they're not arguing, but are bored and just killing time, living in the same home, but really don't like each other very much. But they're Christians, so they're not going to get divorced. And the final phase, the 6th phase, which is hardly there's another one here, but there is. And they call it old age. And this is when you start to experience physical and cognitive issues. You start to question how long you're going to have to live on your own, decisions about assisted living, dealing with one another's just physical and mental challenges. And so the disconnected couple is even more disconnected in this phase because they feel stuck with each other. Or one is forced to be a caretaker for the other. But this is why, at first, when my friend Nancy Kane said only 10% of Christian marriages are healthy and thriving, at first I was shocked. But when you look at these stages, you go, oh, okay, yeah. You've taken divorce off the table, but you haven't put intimacy on it. And you haven't battled through the phases to stay connected. It's easy to slip into this. In fact, I'd imagine a lot of people listening, one of those stung. So what do you do if you heard one of those and they sting? I mean, Daria's like, I'm never having children. No, I don't think you believe that. But
you go to counseling, I think, is a good place to start. I think a lot of, especially older people, are really afraid to go. I don't know why. There's still a stigma around with the older generations around counseling. But if you're just starting out, just keep in mind that you need to put God at the head, but your spouse also has to be a top priority in your life, even when everything else gets messy and life gets busy. Yeah,
and I mean, I would say, I think almost as a rule, when you get to a tough phase, go to couples therapy.
I would argue go before you have issues.
Yeah, like even just for a tune-up. In fact, I heard Dr. Julie Slattery talk about that. She came on the show with us once in studio, and the date we got with her was later than we wanted because her and her husband were on a week-long marriage intensive. She's like, not that there wasn't anything wrong. We just want to stay connected.
Yeah, no, you want to start to tackle those issues when they're small cracks before they turn into years of bitterness and resentment. And I think a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll go when it's too late and they don't know how to fix this because they're both just so stuck in their ways and so angry at the other person.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, don't make Sarah and my mistake. Praise the Lord, we're still together and we've grown close. But we did not get help when we needed it through 1, 2, and 3 on this list. And it compounds on itself. You've got to get the help, and it's got to be counseling. I think part of the stigma, to be honest with you, with like my parents' generation, with boomers and older, is that modern psychology has really developed and changed a lot in the last 20 years. And maybe 30 or 40 years ago, it really was kind of weird. You go, somebody has a notebook and you lay on the couch. It's old Freudian techniques. No, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, there's science behind it, and I think some people think that, oh, that's only for people who are like crazy, pardon the phrase, but that's not the case. I think almost everybody could benefit in some way from counseling.
Yeah, and then the Christian couple who goes, I don't know, we're not doing that bad. You want to be the 10% that are healthy or not? You can't do it just sitting there doing nothing. You're going to have to do hard work to stay connected and be one of the 10% that are healthy and thriving. And that's what the world needs today, is to see Christian couples where you go, I don't know how they got a marriage like that, but that's what I want. That's how we model what marriage should look like in society. It's 7:30. We got to take a quick break for Dr. Tony Evans. Maybe we'll bring this up on Friday for Follow-Up Friday. But we got to get rolling here because the attorney Nathan Zion, Esquire, is in the building. He's going to come in probably with some Latin. Last time he was saying phrases in Latin, people. We were having lots of fun, and we were talking about important things today. It's whether you should have a trust or not. What is a trust? And whether you should have one. Mike's nervous. He's like, I should have a trust.
I trust you.
Don't trust me. Trust Nathan Zion. We'll get to that in just a minute.
Dr. Tony Evans says prayer is often a matter of connecting a problem on earth with the power in heaven. He'll talk to us today about how that process works as we spend 2 minutes with Tony.
This concept of prayer is distributing eternity into time. You remember when the disciples were asked by Jesus, how are we going to feed 5,000 men, not counting women and children, 15 to 20,000 people? And they said, we don't know. But they found a little boy with 2 fish, 5 barley loaves of bread. They brought him to Jesus. The Bible says Jesus looked up to heaven and he prayed. And he invited God into the problem. When everybody opened up their eyes, Moby Dick is laying on the beach. There was supernatural provision so that the scripture says everybody ate till they were full, and there were 12 baskets filled with leftovers for them. And the disciples distributed the food to all that were gathered. Jesus Christ got heaven to enter history, but he prayed for that to take place, which answered the problem, and all men did was distribute what the supernatural had provided. If Jesus had to pray to get his heavenly Father to do something up there to change something down here, how much do you and I need to pray to get God to do something up there that we need him to do down here?
Learn how prayer can bring more of heaven into your earthly life. Check out Tony's CD series, Igniting Kingdom Prayer, available online at tonyevans.org. Then join us next time for 2 Minutes with Tony.
Mornings with Brian. Moody Radio Cleveland. 103.3 at 6 to 9 a.m.
Opinions expressed during this program represent the opinions of the participants and is given for informational purposes only. Any information provided is not intended to replace professional advice for your specific situation. You're now entering the Mornings with Brian courtroom. The cases are real. The attorney is real. But the team is completely clueless. It's time for Sidebar with attorney Nathan Zion, Esquire.
What do I, all rise?
He's a lawyer, not a judge.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So sit down. He's not the judge. Attorney Nathan Zion, Esquire. He makes us do that. He insists.
I do. You're the judge, so we should stand for you. You need one of those graduation robes. Throw that on.
I have one.
Oh, bring it in. Bring it in next time.
Ladies, rise.
No.
What? No, that's not how you talk to us.
Yeah, I wouldn't limit it to ladies. Okay, we got Mike here too. I would say ladies.
Oh, I guess you're an attorney. Yeah, everybody get up.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, that's all right.
Gosh.
Okay, we're skipping that. Glad to have you back, Nathan.
Glad to be back.
Attorney Nathan Zion, Esquire. Again, he's founder of Mulhall Zion LLC, a boutique law firm here in Northeast Ohio. A good friend of the show. His wife, Kathleen, was on the air with me for many years. We go way back.
Yeah,
Good
she's
to
the
have you.
better friend of the show. Yeah.
I mean, technically, yes, but not anymore.
I
right?
see you more frequently, yes. So
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. As a quantity, I'm the better friend, I suppose.
Yes. It's
Great.
a tie, though, in my heart. If you're listening, Kathleen, it's a close tie.
Kathleen's out, Nathan's in.
It's not like that.
What stage of the marriage issue am I now? Because you guys threw me under the bus there.
You guys have 3 babies, basically.
Yeah,
You were resonating with that in some way.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The first kid wasn't, I don't think, the biggest issue for us. It was having additional kids now that we're outnumbered, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's become a little bit more difficult, especially on mom, because she's the one who everyone wants to be with.
Yeah, you can't help that.
No. And I get to go to work, like they don't care about me as much. And so when I come home, they're kind of like, dad's here, great. They'll play with me for a little bit, but mom leaves the room. Where's mom? I need to go get her. So
it's not going to change, by the way. They still
great.
walk right past me to talk to mom. And there's nothing I can do about it.
That's okay. We've got our own ways.
They like her better. It's not fair, Nathan. They like her so much better. You like that, Lauren? No, she doesn't like that. Okay. Today, we're not talking about that, though, with you. The legal issue we're discussing today are trusts, right? We've talked about estate planning before, like a will, but we didn't get into the trust thing. I think a lot of people are confused about this.
Yeah, well, that's what prompted this. I got, that was like show 2 or 3. I got a lot of questions after that, people just calling in, and a lot of people just tell me right away, oh, I need a trust, and so I want to set that up with you. And there's a lot that goes into determining, number one, if you need a trust, and then number 2, what does that look like? And so a lot of people just called in and said, we need a trust. And after talking with them for 20 minutes, I figure out, you really don't need one, or shoot, you need one, maybe your spouse needs one, and then in some instances, a child or someone else in the family needs one. So this prompted a lot of questions from people, and I've answered a lot of questions. I thought, hey, let's educate everyone, the average Joe listener, on it, on kind of what is a trust and if you need it. So the basics, it's a step up from a will is kind of what you're getting at.
We've had people text in on Thursdays and go, what's the difference between a will and a trust? They don't even know the difference.
No one knows.
Yeah.
And people, the big one is, oh, well, if I have one of those, I avoid probate. Well, not true, actually. A will doesn't avoid probate, but the trust is the vehicle that you use to avoid probate. So,
but it's not an actual vehicle.
No.
It's a legal document.
Correct. That's kind
Come
of a
on.
metaphor.
It was a dad joke. Stop shaking your head. Okay, so what is a trust?
So trust is a legal vehicle, if I can use that term,
Yes,
Brian.
you can. I wish you'd use a Latin term, but go ahead.
Sure. I'll get to Latin in a minute. So it's a legal entity that you create to hold assets. So instead of yourself owning something, you set up a trust to own it. And there are really 3 components to a trust. The grantor, the person who sets it up, the beneficiary, who's ultimately going to get the assets that are in the trust, and then the trustee, who kind of governs and controls the trust. So those are kind of the 3 people. Usually the creator and the trustee are the same person. So if I have a trust, it's the Nathan Zion Trust, I'm going to be the trustee of that. Okay, and we're talking, this is generally what we term a revocable trust. I'm sure you've heard that before. Mm-hmm. But that means basically that the person who creates it can revoke it, amend it, change it, undo it, do it, whatever they want with it. That's the most typical. That's like 80 or so % of trusts that are out there for estate planning purposes. Those are revocable trusts for people.
Revocable.
Revocable.
So
Yep.
you can take it back. You
You
can change it.
undo it. You can change it. You could, yeah, because life changes, right? So
Yeah.
these are vehicles that we want to put trusts or assets into that kind of help address problems in our life, right? We want to shield from liability. We have maybe a spendthrift kid, like someone who has issues, and we don't want them to get a cash payout right away, and so those kinds of issues can be addressed within a trust. But that might change. Maybe your kid has a change of heart. Maybe you, unfortunately, I have people who lose children or lose family members or get estranged from them. And so they want to, I don't want to say cut people out, but they have to remove people as beneficiaries from a trust. So as the trust goes on, they can change it and update it. So that's the major one. And then the opposite of that would be an irrevocable trust, where you set up a trust and it's permanently done.
Why would you want that?
Usually there are tax advantages to doing that, or creditor protection. So the biggest example, I get this call a lot. A lot of people who go in, they say, oh, in about 5-10 years, I'm going to need to be on Medicaid. I'm going to need to do some long-term planning. And they're worried about their finances, that they might not qualify for certain government assistance because they have too much money. They have too many assets.
Getting state care would just ultimately just liquidate their assets over a period of time.
Yeah. So there's a calculus that goes through. I won't get into the intricacies of it, but basically they look back at the time you need government assistance. They look back to the 5 years prior and they say, hey, in Ohio, this is 5 years in Ohio, what kind of assets do you have? Could you have exhausted those assets before you relied on the government to do it? And so people want to get ahead of that clock, and they look at me and they say, hey, I want to, sell my house and get rid of this, but I still want to live there so that I, can get the government benefits. The best way to handle those situations is like Medicaid trusts. There's Medicaid payback trusts. There's some other ways to do it, and that's an irrevocable trust.
So once you sign the paper with your attorney, like, for example, you can't change it again.
Yeah, there are minor changes that you can make. There are certain, but for the most part, no, you cannot do it. And I'll be clear, these are specialized trusts, so I don't personally do these because it's kind of a niche area and there's a lot of risk that comes into it. So these people who create these trusts need to know the rules, the ins and outs. But that's a big call I get a lot of times, an often one. Hey, I'm going into Medicaid. I want to get rid of my house, but the problem is they want to keep it. And with an irrevocable trust, you lose control to some degree. You give it over, like you said, to an attorney or a bank or a trustee, a corporate trustee most times. And so you don't have control over that asset. So that's kind of the rare case. Not a lot of people set up irrevocable trusts.
And now in the other trust you were talking about, you talked about a trustee. Is that kind of like an executor of a will, a person who's in charge of just making sure it's distributed the way it's supposed to be?
Yeah, great question. Yes. The short answer is yes. They are a person who kind of govern the trust, but they operate based on the terms of the trust. So you can write specific language in there. Hey, I want this to happen, and you can give them, the trustee, wide latitude or not. You can be pretty close-handed and say, this is what you're supposed to do, or you could say, in their discretion, they can do these things. So it really depends on the particular situation. And I have lengthy conversations with clients saying, what are your goals? What do you want to happen not only during your life, but after you die? We need to kind of instruct the trustee on that, right? We need to tell them, hey, pay attention to these, don't worry about this. So that is an important role, and that's someone who you guess what, have to trust with your finances and everything, and they have to know what your plans are. So you have to, I usually promote or recommend someone that you're close with who kind of understands your wishes and everything.
Is that a perfect moment in a meeting for like a dad joke?
Like
a lawyer joke?
Yeah.
You got to trust your trustee, huh?
I should, maybe songs. I should start incorporating songs into it, come up with a jingle.
Lauren's horrified. There's got to be a moment when you're setting these up. I remember sitting down with a mutual friend of ours, attorney Don Plum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Setting up a will. It's just like the worst questions you ever have to ask anyone.
It's terrible.
And trust and everything. It's like, let's just say this kid dies.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
Oh, no. It's terrible.
Yeah, the questionnaires are not fun to hand out and to address, and oftentimes clients break down in front of me because, the personal issues that are involved. But then I also have family members. I have clients who have family members who they want to disinherit, or they're struggling with maybe addiction issues.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to solve for that, but they still love them and they still want to provide for them, but they want to know, what's the balance? What do I do? And those are very intimate conversations that I'm privileged to have, but at the same time they're sensitive, and I can't give an answer to some of those. I just have to provide options and give instruction of, hey, here are the things to think about. But ultimately, the client has to make the choice. But a lot of these vehicles can be tailor-made for those sorts of situations.
And we'll keep talking about that again. With us right now, attorney Nathan Zion, Esquire, founder of Mulhall Zion LLC, a boutique law firm here in Northeast Ohio, and good friend of the show. When we come back from this break, we'll continue talking about trusts. You could certainly get a question in if you wanted to, 440-546-2255.
Moody Radio is thankful for listeners and support from businesses like Duma Meats and Farm Market. Duma Meats and Farm Market, supporting Moody Radio in Cleveland and surrounding areas. More information about Duma Meats and Farm Market is at dumameats.com.
Attention all high school students and parents. We invite you to visit Moody's campus in the heart of downtown Chicago, in person or virtually. Experience life as a Moody student by scheduling an individual visit to campus with your family. We are excited to welcome you to learn more about whether Moody is right for you and your student. Meet with an admissions counselor and sit in on class in person or through Zoom. Schedule your campus visit today at moody.edu/experience Moody.
Our culture is changing rapidly, and it's easy to get caught up in the frenzy. There is a way to stop the madness. Focal Point Ministries and Moody Radio are offering you a free copy of Encouraged by the Psalms by Pastor Mike Fabarez. Many of the Psalms were written by people who looked beyond their current troubles and found encouragement for their soul. Get your free copy of Encouraged by the Psalms by going to moodyradio.org/encouraged.
Join the conversation by call or text at 440-546-2255. It's Mornings with Brian on Moody Radio Cleveland.
750. He's one of the coolest attorneys in Northeast Ohio / the world. Attorney Nathan Zion, Esquire.
Of the three you know, or two you know? How many do you know?
I know. Is Eddie an attorney? He's not.
No.
Is Jimmy an attorney? No?
No.
Okay, I know two.
Okay.
You
great.
and Don Plum. You guys are tied for
You
best.
know my partner, Brian. So.
Oh, I know him too. I know three.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. We've all solved that, and we've got Nathan Zion, attorney Nathan Zion, Esquire, in studio again from Mulhall Zion LLC, and we're chatting about trusts. It's something people ask about a lot, but I think a lot of people don't quite know what they are and don't quite get it. We've had a couple of questions come in that you wanted to answer, so let's get to this first one here.
My parents have had a trust for 20 plus years. 10 or 15 years ago, an attorney counseled them to put their home in my name and my sister's name to protect it if either of them were placed in a nursing home at the end of their life. Did this action remove it from the trust? And is this still the best position for their asset?
Yes, so it probably did. I would need to look at the deed to understand fully what happened, but if it's in their names, then yes, it's out of the trust likely, and they are now the sole owners of that. They could potentially be trustees of the trust, so it could be in their name and they're trustees of the trust. If you're trying to get around Medicaid and everything, that's kind of a no-no. So I would have to look at the deed to answer that question, but it's likely no longer in the trust.
Because they went in a nursing home.
No, because they transferred it. I think she said that
Under their name, yeah.
she took it out of the trust, and it's now in her and her sister's name. That they're probably the individual owners of that. So the parents then are relying on them to not evict them, right, to allow them to stay there. And that's kind of, a lot of people do that. That's kind of a down and dirty way. Hey, I need to transfer it to someone I trust so that it's not seen as my asset any longer, but I can still use it. That's not the best recommended way to go.
There could be some ethical concerns in that.
Yeah,
right?
there's lots of concerns. And again, I don't practice, I'm not specialized in the Medicaid area. But I would definitely look at this again and figure out if, number one, you violated any sort of rules and if that's the best setup. I don't believe it is. Because there are certain trusts that are meant to keep it in your name, right? And Nathan Zion, it's in the Nathan Zion Trust, but I'm not in control of it, and it's not seen as my asset for means-tested purposes. So I'd have to look at the deed. I'd recommend they seek out an attorney, have them review the deed, have them review the terms of the trust that it came from, and then ultimately figure out what's the next step, if anything.
And I can just be the awkward side note because it's not something attorneys advise on necessarily, but remember the system is set up for Medicaid for people who can't afford it.
Yeah.
And so the idea of hiding assets so that it looks like you can't afford it is something a Christian ought to deeply examine in their soul as whether that's ethical and biblical.
Yeah, there's a struggle there. A lot of clients call in, and I have to tell them, number one, is it legal? But then I, just out of my personal faith, I believe I do have to tell them the same thing, right? Like,
okay, I didn't want to put you in that spot, but
no, and that's not legal advice. That's just personally, you have to evaluate for yourself. Do you think what you're doing is proper, even if it is legal, right?
Do you recommend putting a home, putting the trust as an owner of a home? You know, understand what I'm saying?
So, like in a general sense,
is that something I should do if I have a trust?
So I would say yes. It avoids probate. This assumes that you have a trust. Okay, I wouldn't necessarily a client comes to me and they say, I want to put my home in a trust. I wouldn't create a trust solely for that purpose, usually. But if you have a trust and have other reasons for a trust, then yes, I would definitely put the trust in there, or TOD, transfer on death, to the trust. The reason it would avoid probate when you pass away.
Your family would get possession immediately. Whoever's listed,
whoever's the successor trustee would continue to own that property, right? And then they can distribute it as per the terms of the trust, either hang on to it or give it to the kids. And none of that would require court involvement. Another big one asset is businesses. A lot of business owners own an LLC, corporation, and it's just in their individual name. Well, guess what? When they die with that in their name, they have to go to court and get it transferred out. I'm in a case right now. We're probating it through the county. It's terrible because it's taken 8 months. We're probably going to go on a year soon here to get an LLC interest to a surviving spouse, right?
A surviving spouse?
A surviving spouse.
So it can take 6 to 12 months to go through probate court.
Correct. And now it depends on a whole host of factors, what other assets are at play, all that kind of stuff. But we do have to wait for the probate court to approve all of it. And then what's worse than that, then you usually have to get an appraisal of the company. So you have to get someone to come in and determine the value of the company, report that to the court, then the court has to approve that, and it opens up the court proceedings to any objections. So if you have an heir, like this gets into complex stuff, but if you have an heir who says, oh no, dad's company wasn't worth $1 million, it's worth $6 million, and I want a cut of that, right? They can come and object to the value of the company, and now you're in a battle in the court over the value of the company that you, maybe the surviving spouse or whoever, want to just get and move on with life, right? So there's all these sorts of complications that can kind of come up in the probate sphere that you can avoid if you set up a trust and the LLC or corporation is owned by the trust. There are I should notice the tax issue, that like S corporations can't necessarily be owned by a trust. There's some nuances there. But generally speaking, business owners should consider, should I put my ownership in a trust?
And so it sounds like even from a faith perspective, if you would like to preserve family unity after you pass, it makes sense to do something like this, because I bet you see families fall apart over something as simple as going through probate court and valuing a home.
100%. And it doesn't always come from nefarious activity. It becomes an issue oftentimes just from lack of communication. Dad spoke with maybe one son or daughter and didn't communicate to the other kids. And so the other kids were in the dark up until dad dies. Now the one brother or sister is running the show, and the other kids, I had no idea about this, so then there becomes this kind of disagreement that just stemmed from not being transparent really about your plans.
Is that pretty common?
Yeah, it's fairly common, yeah.
Oh, no. Yeah, Lauren, go for it.
Got another question. You mentioned a revocable trust has elements that can be changed, particularly in a estranged family member. If you have an estranged family member with an irrevocable trust, is it possible to have that particular family member removed? If not, how does one go about giving that beneficiary their portion of the trust when you have no idea how to contact them?
That's a very loaded question, because a lot of these questions can be answered by the trust document itself. Okay, so you can get, I'll call them junky trusts that are 3 pages long, 4 pages long, and then you can get kind of Cadillac trusts that are 80 pages long. A lot of these answers, a lot of these questions can be answered based on the terms of the trust. But generally speaking, irrevocable trusts usually cannot be amended unless they have some sort of release valve. A trust protector is one thing I brought up a couple months ago. This is someone who can step in. They're not a trustee. They're like a third party. They can step in and say, oh, geez, we have a breakdown of the trust planning. We have a beneficiary that we need to change. We have an issue. Assuming the trustee gives them, or the trust gives them authority, that trust protector can change the terms. And it's just for a momentary, like, I need to fix this problem and then move on, and they step out. If a beneficiary, to the second point of the question, if a beneficiary isn't around, then the trustee has to be diligent about trying to find that. But then ultimately, if they can't locate that beneficiary, they have to figure out, well, shoot, do I need to go to the heirs of that trustee or the beneficiary? That might be the case. And if I don't know, does this listener know where they're at? They might. I don't know. There's something in Ohio called lapsing. If a gift lapses, that means it dies with that person. But if it continues on, then guess what? That their gift goes to their kids or their heirs. And so then you have to kind of figure out, well, geez, now do I have to locate theirs? So it is a mess. Yeah. So the short answer, yes, it can be changed in minor instances. I don't know this particular case because I'd have to look at the trust.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, too, as I recall, Sarah and I were in a phase of life where we had minor children, and a trust can be used to make sure that minors or even perhaps children, you're concerned about their level of responsibility. Like you mentioned earlier, someone who's addicted to drugs. You don't want them to receive a lump sum of money in the event you die unexpectedly.
Yes.
Because they'd probably die themselves.
Yeah. Squander
with too much cash.
For sure. Yeah.
And so how does that work where you set up rules, right, for how often and how much your children can receive, at what age and things like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So how the money is to be distributed. A lot of people just want to pay out if they have older children. But if you have younger, there are a couple different ways you can handle it. One is you create a pool and you just say until the youngest reaches a certain age, there's just a pool trust and the trustee pays out each kid based on their needs for that period of time. Another way is a payout period where you say, all right, in 5 years, or immediately you get some payout. In 5 years, you get another payout. And then in another 5 years, you get maybe the balance of it. So over the course of 10, 15, 20 years, the whole trust is exhausted. I tend to push clients in a different direction, and I say, let the trust live for as long as your kids live. So it is a indefinite trust for their lifetime. The reason, this isn't for all cases, but I do recommend it often because it provides creditor protection. You don't know what's going to happen with your kids, how they're going to be with finances. Are they going to get into student loan debt? I mean, we know the student loan issue that's out there right now, right?
Yeah.
So they have issues with that, consumer debt and credit cards. If they get a divorce or something like that, all of these people can kind of make claims on their assets. If you set up a trust yourself and it's for the benefit of your kids and it lasts their lifetime.
So it's slowly giving them their inheritance over a long period of time.
Correct. And they can get all the income off of it, but they don't necessarily get the principal, right? It continues until they pass. That generally provides creditor protection for them.
Interesting.
It's a unique situation. The number 2 call I get is, well, I should create a trust because it provides me creditor protection. No. If you set up the trust and it's a revocable trust, revocable, not irrevocable. If it's a revocable trust, you don't get creditor protection, but your beneficiaries generally will. So that's a consideration for sure.
Yeah. So in that situation, if someone has large assets, you're really like maybe giving an annual stipend from the trust to your child?
Yeah, either that or there's, it depends on what's in the trust. So if you have, brokerage accounts, they might get income off of it. Depends on the type of asset. If it's real estate, right, that's a lot harder to do because you're not making necessarily money off that.
Right.
But you brought up addiction. That's a big one that's popped up over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
There are, I just want to tell listeners out there who maybe don't have a lot of assets but are still concerned about a son or daughter who has addiction problems. There are ways to plan for them where you kind of pool your assets together with other people and they provide. So you don't have to have $3 million, $5 million in order to provide for your son or daughter. You can actually find, like, Community Fund of Ohio is a local trustee basically, and they'll help you set up a trust for the benefit of someone else, your kid or maybe a nephew or niece. And it's an irrevocable trust, and you don't have to have a lot of money to do it. It can be, I think maybe their threshold might be $15,000 is kind of the first start, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not for trusts.
Sure.
So there are avenues out there for people who say, oh, geez, trust really isn't for me because I don't have enough money. It might be. We just have to look at options.
The last one I want to squeeze in is, it's my understanding there's also special needs trusts. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that briefly?
Sure. Yeah. So there are all sorts of special needs trusts that you can create, and that this usually relies on you're trying to shield that person from means-tested governmental aid. So they get assets, like let's just say you have a son who has special needs. You as the parent might make enough money and might have enough assets to where the government comes and says, no, you need to use your assets to provide for your son or daughter. If you set up this special needs trust, you can fund that, and the son or daughter is not seen as owning the asset, and so they're seen as impoverished, more or less. They have no means, and so they can't provide it. So they can get income from the government then. I also add special needs provisions into general revocable trust because you don't know what the future brings. So if you're going to seek an attorney who's going to create a trust for you, even if you don't have special needs, always keep that in mind because your son, daughter in the future might have special needs, or a grandchild, heaven forbid a grandchild, right? You need to have that, I believe, in your revocable trusts, as some sort of language that says, if this situation arises, we can kick in some special needs provisions that shields them and helps them get benefits that they otherwise wouldn't be entitled to.
Attorney Nathan Zion Esquire, again, is founder of Mulhall Zion LLC, a boutique law firm here in Northeast Ohio. The best way to find him, either Google it or just come to us. We'd be glad to connect you with Nathan. As always, thanks for sharing this. I think you'd call it pro bono legal advice.
It's not legal advice. This is not legal advice.
It's pro bono.
This is pro bono education.
Information.
Yeah, information. Yeah, there's no legal advice.
I have no idea what I'm doing clearly on this end. You're like, this is not advice. No, don't take my advice.
General tips and tricks to talk to your own attorney about. Yep.
Very good. Thank you, Nathan. As always, we're grateful. Say hi to Kathleen for us, okay?
Will do. Thanks, guys.
All right. It's 8:04. It's time for Mike's News as Ron is out today. And then we're not too far away from Dr. Chris Rappazini from Anderson University talking about followership. Not leadership, followership.
Mornings with Brian on Moody Radio Cleveland, WCRF Cleveland, WVMS Sandusky, WVML Millersburg, WVMN Newcastle, WVME Meadville, WVMU Ashtabula, and everywhere with the Moody Radio app or at moodyradio.org/Cleveland.
The Minnesota Court of Appeals is siding with a woman who was denied, quote-unquote, emergency contraception by a pharmacist in 2019. Good morning. It's 8:05. I'm Mike Reynolds, in for Ron Eastwood, Moody Radio News. The court ruled Monday that the pharmacist's denial of the so-called morning after pill amounted to gender discrimination. The pharmacist who refused to fill the prescription had argued that the effect of the morning after pill violates his religious beliefs. It's primary day in the Buckeye State. Polls are open until 7:30. Voters around the state will cast ballots for their choices to be the party nominees for their federal representatives. In Cuyahoga County, voters will also choose judicial candidates, the county prosecutor, as well as voting up or down on a county tax renewal for Health and Human Services. In the Akron area, voters will also choose candidates for Summit County Council and a number of tax levies as well. Production on a new Superman film is expected to begin in Ohio in the coming months. Producers who filed paperwork with the state report that 25% of the film will be shot in the Buckeye State, with production in Cleveland and Cincinnati. Filming is expected to take place beginning in April. I'll be back in a moment with a look at scores and skies.
Moody Radio is thankful for the support from our listeners and Bridgeway Academy. Bridgeway specializes in flexible homeschool programs that give you the freedom to homeschool your way with a fully accredited homeschool program. Learn more at bridgewayacademy.com.
And in sports, the Cavaliers edged the Pacers 108-103. March Madness begins with two matchups in the first four tipping off from Dayton today. Wagner versus Howard and Colorado State versus Virginia. Ohio State basketball also returns to action tonight against Cornell. The Guardians slipped by the White Sox 8-5 in a spring training game. The Guardians host the Brewers this afternoon. Meanwhile, the Reds fell to the Giants 4-2. Your Moody Radio Cleveland weather forecast. Mostly cloudy today, the high near 45 degrees. In Akron, last check, flurries reported 28 degrees. In Cleveland, 30 with mostly cloudy skies. In Lorain, Elyria, cloudy, 29. And Youngstown, flurries, 29 degrees. It is 8:07 with Moody Radio News. I'm Mike Reynolds for Ron Eastwood.
Broadcasting live from the Bob Devine studio. It's Mornings with Brian. Want to join the conversation? Call or text now at 440-546-2255.
Mornings with Brian. Moody Radio Cleveland. 103.3 at 6
Galatians, it talks about to be led by the Holy Spirit. And that's so important too. And so, yeah, we're all following. We're following something. We're following someone.
Okay, one more pet peeve of mine to throw at you on this. It's the idea that you have many people who aren't focused on following. What they're focused on is dethroning the leader. Like, how can I get that job and get rid of them?
Well, and that's the negative side or the shadow side of followership is, followers oftentimes can be very needy. They can be always looking for an angle. They can be disruptive. They can be isolated. They can be passive followers, which is why I think followership needs to be taught more. We teach leadership classes, and a lot of times I work with organizations and churches to come in and help their leaders, but very few, or what I love doing, is talking to teams about how to become better followers, how to be an effective follower, how to work with your boss better, and so that you actually, as the follower, and that's the exciting thing about followership and this new research and study of coming out with followership, is it's showing that, wow, followers have a lot of influence and sway on both the leader and the organization.
Yeah, and it's such an important topic to talk about followership. Yeah, I think we all struggle with this, and I wonder how much of it is sociological even, as I had an opportunity to go to India recently, which isn't an individualistic society. It's much more of a community-centric society. And I see for us in an individualistic society, I wonder if we're set up to struggle more with following because we're so individualistic.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. Independence is a great thing, but yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think though where we, being, I would say, Christians, have kind of a corner on the market is the church is a beautiful example, I think, of what followership is supposed to be, right? What does it mean to be a great follower? Well, it's somebody who's loyal, who's trustworthy, who's influenced or accepts influence from the Scripture, and I think hopefully they're ethical leaders, and you're working towards a common goal. And I think the church, oftentimes, or I should say this, when the church is functioning well,
there you go.
It's a great model for followership.
Absolutely. All right, it's 8:17, time for a quick break. Our guest is Dr. Chris Rappazini, Associate Professor of Leadership at Anderson University. We'll continue chatting about followership in just a moment.
Protecting Your Children from Internet Pornography is the new book from Dr. John Fobert. He helps you understand how pornography affects the development of your child's brain, how pornography is a recipe for sexual violence, and why and how you should take steps to protect your children and those you love. You'll benefit from his practical suggestions at the end of each chapter. Get your copy of Protecting Your Children from Internet Pornography. Go to moodybooks.org.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-659-9838. That's 1-800-659-9838.
Prayer. It's the bridge between your panic attack and the peace of God that passes all understanding. If you'd like our staff to pray for you, email your request to prayerworks@moody.edu.
Are you looking for candid conversation from a biblical perspective? You found it. It's Mornings with Brian on Moody Radio Cleveland.
8:19 WCRF. Don't forget our share campaign wrapped up on air last week. It continues throughout this week as we just dot the I's, cross the T's. We're at 98.66%, only $6,700 till 100%. with your support, we can get there real quick here. 800-600-9624, moodyradio.org, moodyradio.org. And then remember, on Thursday around this time, you won't recognize me on a live stream because of Cher and a match, I have to shave my beard. And we're going to have a barber actually do it with a straight edge and everything. It's going to be amazing. And then Ron's going to he's going to go from, what did Josh call it, our station manager?
He said, we're going to shave 1/3 of a head.
And he'll go from 1/3 of a head of hair to 0%. He's going to shave it down to cue ball.
So funny.
You get nothing.
Yeah, he'll get nothing.
You lose.
It will be epic. So listen, you can watch, you're going to live stream, subscribe on our YouTube channel, or just listen in later this week. We'll explain it. That's coming up on Thursday.
I was looking at Ron's head. He's going to look good.
Oh, he'll look great.
I was looking at a picture. I was like, he's going to look so cute.
Yeah, like if I started balding, I think I'd just go for it. Whole thing. I don't know. I don't have that problem. I have a little bit of a balding problem now, but we won't talk about that. We're pretending like it's not happening.
I didn't say it.
Daria, it's not happening.
It's not happening.
Thank you. No way to transition, so we're back now with our friend Dr. Chris Rappazini. I have no idea where your hairline is, so I can't say anything on that, Dr.
He's got
Rappazini.
great hair.
He's got great hair, you
Yeah.
said, Lauren?
Yes.
I've heard you have great hair, Doc.
Well, thank you. I still have some of it. It's turning a lot of gray because of my kids, that's for sure.
Yeah, I ended up with a stripe on my face first, which is the Bible says gray hair is a crown of glory. I don't think you wear crowns on your face, so I don't have a crown yet, except my face. Long story. Anyway, he's Dr. Chris Rappazini, Associate Professor of Leadership at Anderson University. Today we're talking about, for followers of Jesus, how important it is to understand followership. Now, as we discussed it previously before the break, I feel like inherent in some of your comments is that followership requires some level of submission. Is that accurate?
Well, I think no, I would not say submission. Actually,
Okay,
I would
good.
say acceptance. Acceptance. A little bit different, right? Submission is when we think of like when there's a military battle and one side submits, right? Or
Like a surrender, you're saying, yeah.
a surrender, yeah. Or in a wrestling match, right? They surrender, they submit, right? You submit out. Where acceptance is you are accepting the leader or the influence of the leader, which is challenging, right? And there's a word in there, the influence of the leader, not the role of the leader. There's two different things because what I love working with is helping leaders become leaders worth following, which is different than just being a leader in the role, because you can be a role leader or an influence leader, right? And so, yeah, I think acceptance is a better word for followership, that we are accepting what this leader has to offer.
And now once we accept that, there's a level at which, I don't know, I mean, we're not tossing aside ethics. We certainly have lines where if they're behaving unethically, we're certainly going to say something. But like, to what extent should we find a way to be happy with accepting leadership?
Yeah, well, and you're right, because there's different types of followers, right? I mean, I used the illustration of military. Like, you want your military to follow that leader, but there's cult leaders, right? That you don't want to follow cult leaders and things like that. And it kind of gets down to is the organization, is the leader helping followers become better followers? And what does it mean to become a better follower? Well, actually, good followers, there's a space to challenge the leader, but also to support the leader. There's research that's been done with organizations, and the word is psychological safety. Do the followers feel safe in speaking out where they're not in fear of a consequence or losing their job? Do they feel safe in that job, in that position? And some organizations do not. I mean, I think you guys have probably a healthy one where they can speak out. Everybody can speak out and hold their own opinion. But there's other organizations out there where, if you say something that crosses the leader, that might be it for you as a follower. And that is not a great place to work, and that is not an example of what followership is intended to be.
Yeah, and when I've seen that play out, you would presume as a theory that it would be some sort of malicious leader who's trying to squelch people. But I would say oftentimes, in my experience at least, leaders don't realize that they've created an environment that's not psychologically safe. Is that accurate?
I think you're exactly right. Yeah. And it happens all the place. I mean, it happens in the church. It happens in nonprofit ministries. And it's almost an unawareness, like you said, of the leader. But it's detrimental. I mean, I've been in these situations. I've worked with followers and leaders in these situations, and you really are unproductive. Everybody is unhappy, or a lot of people are unhappy. And that's when people start looking for other jobs because they want better leadership.
And now play out a scenario with me in terms of being a good follower. I mean, let's just say, for example, I feel safe here in this radio station. So our station manager, let's just say he's got an idea about how to do something that I don't agree with it. I think there's a better way to do it. He's the leader, and he allows me safely to say I disagree, right? Well, but at the end of the day, it's his call. So how do I come around and support him in a good way, in a healthy way as a follower, even if I don't like his choice?
Yeah, well, so this is so interesting because there's two components to that. One is called reversing the lens, and this is where we look at the follower and how the follower actually influences the leader. And then there's the leadership co-created process, where hopefully the leader works with you to get the best interest, and then it's actually a co-created process. And if the leader is still at the end of the day choosing it, you might want to ask, well, why are they choosing it the way they are? And was there even a point in asking you, right? If they were all along going to make the same decision, then is that really the strongest way of leadership, right? That's not necessarily team leadership. Just because you get input, if you have an idea and you don't actually ever go off of it. Now, sometimes the leader needs to, make their own decision. But if they're never actually going against what they had originally intended, then they're not really being a team leader. They're being more of an authoritative, transactional leader, not necessarily a transformational leader. And then to your question, okay, if they go against it one time, two times, okay, I think that's acceptance. But if there's a repeated pattern, then that might need to be a conversation happening of, okay, I've given these ideas time and time and time and time again, but you seem to we never go with them, or not even close.
Yeah.
And so, I think a conversation needs to happen there. And sometimes the leader, again, they perceive they're being a cooperative team, collaborative leader. They perceive it in their mind, but then the facts don't lie. It's like, well, no, the track record is, usually just go with what you had intended all along.
Yeah, I worked for a principal like that when I was a teacher, where I remember we were in a big staff meeting. He asked for everyone's input. There was consensus on a particular decision, and he did the opposite. It became clear that he didn't care what we thought. He was only feeling like he had to get our input to make us feel better about ourselves. People can see right through that. And yet what I can tell you, though, is I've been in situations where there's healthy dialogue, there's healthy exchange, and I know that this individual that's a leader over me wants the best for whatever the group is that they're leading. And so I can, at one point, go, okay, you know what? We have different ideas here, but I know you have my best interests at heart. So let's go. Mm-hmm. I don't have to feel angry or hurt that we're going your way, not mine.
Right. And that's part of the role of the leader, too. I think leadership at its heart and core is listening and caring for those who are following. And if you as a leader can show that you are listening actively to people's opinions, advice, and show that you care for them, it goes a long way in building trust.
Yeah, and you can actually have somebody who may not think your strategy is the best be one of your biggest supporters, because they know they've built that trust over time. And I'd imagine that's a complex, long journey to get to that point.
It is. And that's why, I love working with organizations and helping followers support the leader, helping followers how to learn from their leaders, and also how to challenge their leaders when they need to be challenged.
And, I will say, too, that as followers of Christ, as people who are inherently followers, we've got to check our pride at the door. And if we're just upset because our idea wasn't the one that's picked, it's our problem. It's not that if you think your idea is always the best, you got a pride problem.
Yeah, right. and understanding where you bring value to the organization, right?
Yes.
Because it might not be, hey, I'm the idea creator. Well, you actually add value over here in finishing the job, getting the job done, right? Where somebody else brings value to bringing all the ideas, but we need somebody to actually, make the process work smoothly, and that's where you bring value. So
yeah, and I just not to toot our own horn here, but I've always been really blessed to be a part of this particular radio team in a small station where it's okay that someone's better than me at something because they value me and what I'm good at, and I think teams operate best when we can go, hey, Lauren, she's best at this. Way to go, Lauren! I'm cheering for her. She can take that for all of us. But it's rare. So I know we're blessed here for certain.
Yeah, and that's a level of leadership maturity, and you could also say spiritual maturity there. So,
good point. Yeah, we didn't even get to that. But yes, spiritual maturity can create a healthy follower. That's maybe for next time. Who knows? Again, Dr. Chris Rappazini's been our guest here, Associate Professor of Leadership at Anderson University, and soon to be published Moody Publishers author, as I recall. When's the book coming out again?
The beginning of May.
All right. Super exciting. Keep your eyes out for that. For now, if folks want to learn more about you and what you're doing, how can they find out?
Yeah, actually, they could go to faithfulstepsforward.com. So it's where I get to work with leaders and followers, either virtually or in person. So yeah, faithfulstepsforward.com.
Thanks again for your time, and I know we'll have you back soon, okay?
Great. My pleasure.
You bet. 8:31. Coming up in just a minute, I was really struck by a Washington Post piece recently. It's called "The Wives Are Not All Right." And it shared a statistic about divorce. We talked about this a little earlier today. This wasn't on purpose necessarily. I had no idea this number. And it would make you really believe the wives are not all right. We'll talk about it from a faith perspective in just a few minutes.
Encouraging you to step out into your mission field. This is Footsteps from TWR. With today's discussion, here's Andy Napier.
Do you ever lack the confidence to share Jesus with others? Today's guest has some advice. Pete Walker is passionate about introducing others to Jesus. And Pete, would you say that we're often hesitant because we forget the power of God's Word?
One of the things that have given me confidence in my call and my witness is trusting in the report of the Lord, His command, His commission, and that His word won't come back void. Not just the written word, but the spoken word. So it's interesting, He says to Ezekiel, when He's calling Ezekiel 2:5, God says, "Speak my word, whether they listen or fail to listen, speak my word." There comes a question when it comes to witnessing as to whose report you're going to believe. Isaiah 53:1. Do you believe what the world says to you? That this isn't relevant, people don't want it. That's a report that will come against you. Or do you believe the report of the Lord, who says that I've made these people, Acts 17:25, I've made them to know me, to reach me. So as we move in the lead of the Lord, then we can deposit words of Christ, ultimately the gospel of Jesus Christ, and know and believe that His word is stronger than even the word of resistance that might rise up in someone's heart or their mouth. And you have to have that confidence or you wouldn't move forward.
So just speak God's word, knowing it's powerful. To listen again or to share this program with others, go to twr.org/footsteps.
Footsteps is a production of TWR.
For King and Country. Are you available the weekend of April 19th? Great, because we're thinking we'd like to send you to Nashville to meet them. Moody Radio will send you and a friend to a 3-day event at the Country Music Hall of Fame hosted by Joel and Luke Smallbone. Pre-release movie screening of Unsung Hero, private listening party, podcast recording, and more. Enter to win at moodyradio.org/unsung. No purchase necessary. Contest ends March 31st at midnight. moodyradio.org/unsung.
You can secure your master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from Moody Theological Seminary. Study at the Chicago or Plymouth, Michigan campuses. Be equipped as a servant leader who can transform your community. The graduating class of 2017 had a 100% job placement and a 100% pass rate on the National Counselor exam. You'll be equipped to meet the needs of others while you reflect the character of Christ. Get started today at moody.edu/counseling. That's moody.edu/counseling.
Mornings with Brian. Moody Radio Cleveland. 103.3 at 6 to 9 a.m. Mornings with Brian.